Welcome to the magical world of Fairy Ring. Discover this tactical and innovative game for 2 to 4 players ages 8 and up that plays in around 40 minutes. In Fairy Ring, create a mushroom village to house the fairies in the clearing and guide them through the fairy ring to gather as many points as possible. In this rules overview, we will show you a 3-player game. The rules do not change with 2 or 4 players. Place a village board, corresponding score wheel and player aid in front of you. Turn your wheel to 0 and keep your score hidden from other players until the end of the game. Sort the cards into 3 decks according to their back. Starting cards, round 1 cards and round 2 cards. Draw a random starting card and place it above your board face up. Put the remaining starting cards back in the box. Take the fairy standee that matches your flower and place it on your starting card. In the round 1 and 2 decks, use cards corresponding to the number of players shown in the bottom right of each card. With 2 players, use only the 2 cards. With 3 players, use only the 2 and 3 cards. And with 4 players, use all the cards. Then shuffle each deck. Take the round 1 deck and deal 7 cards to each player, face down. Put the remaining cards back in the box. Place the mana tokens in the center of the table to make a reserve. Randomly choose a player who takes the first player tile and places it beneath the left side of their board. Now you're ready to play. The game plays over 2 rounds. Each round has 6 turns, each with the following phases. Simultaneously, look at your cards. Choose one to place face down under the right side of your board. Place your remaining cards also face down under the left side. The first player places their cards on top of the first player token. Then one at a time, starting with the first player, then continuing clockwise, complete the following 3 actions in order. Place your mushroom, move your fairy, then gather mana. To place your mushroom, reveal your chosen card and place it in your village. To do this, you have 2 options. You may plant a new mushroom by placing your card to the very left or very right of all your other mushrooms. This means you can never place a card between 2 already planted mushrooms. Instead of planting a new mushroom, you may place your card on top of a mushroom of the same type to make it grow. Make sure to use the stacking line as a guide. Treat a mushroom made of multiple stacked cards as a single mushroom. Note that a mushroom can never have more than 4 stacked cards. However, you may plant as many mushrooms as you like, and you can have multiple mushrooms of the same type in your village. In our example, we're going to plant a new mushroom. Fairies move clockwise across a route made up of all players' mushrooms. The leftmost card in your village is connected to the rightmost card of the next village, and so on. All mushrooms form a ring that changes each turn, depending on how players planned. The card you just played determines your fairy's movement. Move your fairy as many mushrooms as shown on your card. And finally, gather mana. Each mushroom produces mana in a different way, which are all explained on your player aid, as well as at the end of this video. When you gather mana from a mushroom, count the mana produced by all the cards that are part of this mushroom, and take as many mana tokens from the reserve. Depending on the mushroom your fairy stopped on, there are 2 possible situations. If your fairy stopped on one of your mushrooms, you gather mana from this mushroom. But if your fairy stopped on one of your opponent's mushrooms, your opponent gathers mana from this mushroom. However, all is not lost. Check your village. If you have 1 or more mushrooms of the same type as the one your fairy stopped on, you also gather mana from one of your mushrooms. In this example, my fairy stops on my opponent's Magidrome, so they gather mana from their mushroom. Since I also have Magidromes in my village, I gather mana from my biggest one. As soon as you gather at least 20 mana, gain 1 point. Turn your score wheel 1 notch to the right and put your 20 mana back in the reserve. After everyone has taken these 3 actions, pass the remaining cards to the player to your left. The first player tile also passes to the next player, who becomes the new first player, and a new turn begins. The round ends once everyone has played 6 cards. The final card is not played. Put it back in the box. Begin the second round by dealing 7 cards from the round 2 deck to each player. This round plays in exactly the same way as the first one. At the end of the second round, reveal your score wheel. The player with the most points wins the game. In case of a tie, the player with the most mana in front of them wins. If there is still a tie, tied players share the victory. The Magi Drome simply lets you gather the number of mana shown. Here you gather 7 mana total. The Lookout gives you points depending on its size, meaning its number of stacked cards. In this example, your Lookout has 2 cards, so you gather 8 mana. The Pollinarium lets you gather 1 mana per mushroom in your village. Here, you have 6 mushrooms in your village. Therefore, you gather 6 mana with the bottom card of your Pollinarium and 6 more mana with the top card. With the Academy, gather as many mana as your fairies' movement. In this example, your fairy stopped on the Academy after moving 5, so you gather 5 mana for each card in your Academy. The Luminarium lets you gather 1 mana per visible firefly in your village. Here you gather 6 mana per card in your Luminarium. Finally, each time a fairy, including your own, moves over your spring without stopping, gather the number of mana shown. In this example, you gather 3 mana. Watch out though, since a fairy that stops on a spring instead of moving over it doesn't gather any mana. The spring is also special since it gives you 3 choices for your fairy's movement. Choose its movement when you play this card in your village. After several games, we suggest playing with objective cards. This variant doesn't change the base rules, but spices things up to let you gain extra points by fulfilling objectives. Everything is explained on the last page of your rulebook. And that's it! You're now ready for your first game of Fairy Ring. Have fun!